it's kind of like a Rogue One to me, which is the opposite of some of the other Star Wars movies that have been made. Instead of like taking something that was beloved about the originals and um, dousing it in gasoline and setting it on fire, it actually enhances it. It provides more context. It gives you so much. It's additive instead of reductive. And
Yes.
I like when they do stuff like that. When they
Also,
made
my personal favorite Star Wars movie.
it's great. It's also the only one where they were brave enough to just smoke everyone at the end. Spoiler alert. Sorry, it's
Yeah.
2 years old.
And that's, even though I love that about the movie, that's not even the reason I like that movie.
What was your we'll
Oh, I
shift
like
gears here for a second. What really made you like that? What made it your favorite?
basically everything you just said. It just opened, every closet door in the Star Wars universe, that in the first 3 movies, you just get all this hindsight
Hmm.
into what is, I guess essentially even just like a throwaway line of like, a lot of good people had to die to get these plans, for the destruction of the first Death Star. Then you get basically a whole movie about that, and seeing, how like you get kind of I don't know, it just paints a more human face on the people even that created the Death Star. you know? So it's
Yeah.
just, the whole movie is just excellent. Not to mention, like, again, it's very beautifully like shot as far as cinematography goes. You get introduction to incredibly new cool characters. The whole movie's not hinged on Jedi or some kind of lightsaber wielding person. In fact, it's not hinged on that at all.
Mhm.
And like you said, every character in the movie is willing to and does end up dying to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
a good movie from like front to end.
And that's that, like they went through many reshoots and rewrites, but what even with slicing some things out of there, which I'd love to see deleted scenes from that. I'd love to see what things didn't make it, but what they ended up with worked. And I mean, the first Star Wars was a victim of restrictions, financial mostly, and time and resources, and this big sprawling Flash Gordon like epic that Lucas had concocted in his head couldn't come to fruition, so they had to tighten the story to just what mattered.
Yeah.
And so they got a really good, amazing movie in both cases, and they're both parts of the same story, so it's kind of poetic.
Agreed. That was a good. That's gonna get a joke. I was like, if you're gonna watch the Batman or Rogue One, I suggest Rogue One.
I mean, it depends on what you look. I say, but watch them both. Man, I watched crap because it had superheroes in it. Like
Oh yeah, definitely.
there's a Rainn Wilson movie, and that barely qualifies. But if Batman's a superhero, Rainn Wilson with a wrench is a superhero. Um, you don't have to
I've
actually have powers.
I've definitely watched some crap, even mainstream crap.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
the third Blade is pretty crappy.
it and even then, man, this is why I'll still go watch every comic book movie. It still had some funny parts in it. It still
Yeah.
had moments that are memorable. Hannibal King, what'd you do with my dog? And that's like after they launched it off the roof.
Yeah.
He's like,
Vampire
even that.
Pomeranian is funny.
Oh God, yeah, that thing pretty much was the high point of the movie.
Yeah.
Uh, but
I just
even
wonder how Wesley Snipes isn't just sweating his ass off in every scene of that movie. For some reason, they just threw like 90 more layers on him in that movie.
I know, and it's all leather. He had like the
Yeah.
equivalent of 1.5 cows on his body at that point.
I don't know how he wasn't just drenched in perspiration in every scene. Must have been very cold in that movie.
We're filming in Canada in winter. I mean, I think Beale and what's his name, Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds, Canadian. Oh, by the way, the Adam Project on Netflix, very good.
Yeah, I keep
Very
meaning to
good.
watch that, and then I keep forgetting about it. That is definitely something I'll be watching.
Yeah, I saw it last night and it didn't look super compelling from the commercials on Netflix. It was just sort of like, yeah, Ryan Reynolds does a lot of Netflix movies. But honestly, like Red was great. Adam Project was great. Free Guy, which I don't even know if it was for Netflix. I think it was supposed to be a real movie first.
Yeah.
Great. Really liked all those.
Yeah, those were all good. I was gonna say the only movie, but it was actually an Amazon Prime movie, I think, not Netflix movie. And that it isn't him either. It's Chris Pratt. That like future movie.
I know which one you're talking about. I was wondering if that was any good.
So as far as like you can just if you're just like going into it like mind numb to watch some like cool alien / time travel movie, yeah, it can be fun on that point. But it's not a good movie. Like there's the movie is a plot hole as far as I'm concerned. but
It's kind of how I feel about
I can have
Independence
fun
Day.
watching it though. Absolutely. I mean, the fact that an alien species advanced enough to cross the vast universe and conquer multiple planets doesn't have antivirus software seems a bit ridiculous.
No, and is compatible with USB and Apple.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I believe they wirelessly admitted it.
Yeah, it might have been through Bluetooth. But no, dude, I loved that movie when it came out, and I watched it years later thinking that love would still be there. And oh man, like
So
they tried really hard, but
that movie holds the place of the movie I've seen more than any other movie, simply because I believe they had it at the $2 theater in Greeley for like 3 months. And I was a latchkey. I mean, you know what a latchkey kid is, right?
Oh yeah.
So I couldn't go home, and the $2 theater was like a couple blocks from my house. So I think I saw that movie like 30 times over the course of like 3 or 4 months.
Oh my gosh.
And at that age, that movie was amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I remember loving it when I came out of the theater, and I remember wishing that we're still there. And it's a terrible movie. It's a very fun, terrible movie, and because it's fun, I can forgive it. Wild Wild West, also with Bill Pullman and Will Smith. Terrible, not that much fun.
No. I don't like Wild Wild West. It's hard to sit there.
There's very little to make me like that movie. Like there are a couple of scenes that were kind of Bugs Bunny funny. Like, here's a sight gag, This is something Bugs Bunny would have done in the 40s or whenever those cartoons came out. But like,
very surprised Will Smith decided to make that movie. Although looking back on it, he's made some pretty bad movies.
Yeah, well, he's got a big catalog, and there's some good ones in there. And for a guy did he win the Oscar or just get nominated for the one of the real life story about that guy with the kid that had to come up from nothing and fix his life? Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
I know the screenwriter. I think the writer got an Oscar. I don't know if Will Smith got one.
I'm not sure. That's a good movie though.
Yeah, and Will Smith's been in the Oscar conversation many times, but just like Halle Berry, you can be at an Oscar celebration one week and the Razzies the next. There's certainly some Razzie-worthy Will Smith movies.
What was that movie he made with his kid? That movie's garbage.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I didn't see it.
God, it must be so. I know we were wildly off topic, but I don't care. I think we got to beat the Batman up, but it must be so hard to be a child of someone like Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, because I hate to say it, but I mean, like, and not that the kid can't grow into it if he wants to, but he doesn't have anywhere the amount of talent that the pull he's being forced into as he was growing up. You know what I mean? It's like,
dude, they're talking about him for Miles Morales, and it's like, oh no, come on.
Where has he shown anything to put him up to be worthy of that. I mean, like the Karate Kid was okay, but not because he was in it. It's like Jackie Chan's like the only really good part about that movie. Yeah, that kid did with the other Earth or whatever it is. Like that movie's just terrible.
Yeah.
If you read any, like, follow him at all on social media, which I've only seen like clips and stuff, I mean, he's kind of a ridiculous human being. His music is terrible. Like, and not that he couldn't, like, it's nothing even against him because he has no reason to be good at any of these things because he's just, you know, the kid of uber millionaires.
This is kind of why monarchies fail, and why, I mean, the United States has basically created an unofficial monarchy, with the generational wealth and inherited wealth, and like people who are basically royalty. You don't get the same perspective as you do living in the world as you do looking down on it. And for the right people, so I mean that's a position that needs to be re-earned, which is why, like, you know, people should be taxed very heavily on inheritance over a certain amount. If it's something that, like, makes it so no one in your family has to work for the next 10 generations, that's too much. That should be reduced. You need to, like, be comfortable. Sure, like, your parents earned that. That's what they wanted for you. But if you don't have something to strive for in general, and in most cases, and there, I haven't seen a case to make me think otherwise. If you don't have some difficulty to learn how to deal with difficulty, you're going to have a very hard time actually contributing something to the world. You're only going to be looking at things you need, things people in your social or economic strata need. Like, where are we going to find room for 5 yachts on this island? I know, let's expand the island and think out of the box. And you'll find solutions for whatever you're in. But if you're not in the actual world, you don't see it for what it is, and you can't. I mean, it takes a very special person to have, like, an innate perspective or be able to switch perspective effectively. For everyone else, you're going to look at things from where you are. And we see this, like, so there was an experiment years ago, psychological experiment, and they still kind of do this every now and then. So you take some kids and you put them in a room and you put a cookie in front of them, and you're like, if you can wait 10 minutes, I'm going to give you 2 cookies, or 2 pieces of candy. You have one in front of you. If you take it now, you don't get any more. If you wait 10 minutes, you get like double or triple what that is. And kids who were from a poorer environment, who grew up with greater need in their life, typically, not in every case, but in a statistically significant number, would just take the candy right off the bat, because their perspective is the world is chaotic and there's very little stability and guarantee that anything will be there in 10 minutes. If you don't take what is offered now, what is able to be taken now, you don't know that you'll get anything later. Kids that are raised in, different socioeconomic strata, they had a little bit more balance in their ability to make that choice. And personality figures into it, but when your environment is pure chaos, or enough chaos that you don't feel comfortable that something good can last for 5 minutes, you're not going to live your life that way.
Yeah.
And if you feel like things will always be there, no matter what choice you make, you're going to live your life differently too. So, like with most things, you need a mix, you need a balance, you need a range of experiences in order to actually formulate a healthy understanding of the world and yourself and how to accomplish things in it. That's why some Roman emperors would send their sons, their heirs, to the front lines to be with the soldiers, so that they cared about the lives that they were going to put at stake, so that they ate the same food and had the same conditions and understood that not everything is palace life.
Yeah.
But it's hard for a parent to do that. I mean, every parent you ask, do you want a better life for your kid than for you? Yeah, of course. But what does that mean when you're a trillionaire?
Yeah, that's. I mean, obviously, not in that position. Probably will never be in that position, so I can't judge them. But I know it definitely doesn't typically make someone as talented as the person that got to that position.
No.
A lot of athletes have seemed to have been able to do it with their kids, but I wonder, is it fulfilling for the kid at that point? I wonder a lot of times, but I mean, regardless, genetics and like pushing and coaching does seem to go a long way in the athletic world. I've
Mm.
noticed a lot of like super athletes tend to have super athletic children as well. LeBron
I mean,
James's like son is like already in the talks for like where he's going to go in the NBA, stuff like
wow.
that. But I've watched some of the game film on him, and he's nowhere near at the level like LeBron James was at his age, or is. So, but LeBron James is also a freak athlete, so it's kind of hard to do.
Yeah, the people who get to that level are less than 1% of the population of their society that even have the genetic ability to compete at that level. And then the rest comes from having the willpower and the drive. And being hungry will make you find willpower. And being in a place where if you don't make that work, um, then you're going to be stuck. You
Oh,
find a way to make it work. Can you see me?
I cannot. I can still hear you. So
Let's see.
you're still recording, but your camera.
Sorry, I got a call from my brother, and it like
Oh, no,
uh,
you're good.
switched everything over.
Damn, your brother calls you late.
Yeah, he's a night owl like me, but I'll
um,
check in with him in a little bit.
okay. Um, yeah, that does seem to be something that is environmentally bred for the most part,
You need both. Like a person, people will
and
tell you this every
genetically bred
time.
as well.
Yeah, like average talent and a ton of drive will get you very far. But to be at the top of the NBA, you have to be born with far above talent and far above drive.
It's pretty much true for like every major sport. That's always why I find it weird when people are, and this is like controversial, but when people want to introduce the whole like male female thing doesn't matter. And I'm like,
Hmm.
at the top positions, it absolutely matters. I don't care in high school or whatever,
Hmm.
if a girl wants to play football in high school, that's fine. But you're never going to have a woman in the NFL. Like, and it's not because woman isn't awesome. It's because you're never going to have 99% of any man in the NFL. Like,
Hmm.
you have to be a genetic freak
To
and be a
begin
man
with,
to be in the NFL. And like,
yeah,
for some reason, I didn't decide it. Genetically, men seem to be stronger and faster than women when they're at that peak, of a position. Not that
yeah,
there
and
aren't incredibly athletic and incredibly fast women, but for some reason it's not the same.
it does come down to typically one measurement, and that is testosterone, because
Yeah,
testosterone leads to muscle recovery, leads to density in your bones from recovery as well. When you put pressure on it, we respond better. And that's not like, basically what you're saying. It's at the very, very top, the most powerful man and the most powerful woman, it will matter what their testosterone levels are, which is why some
yeah,
people argue about like trans athletes and all that, and which is why they have regulations like for professional sports. You can't have,
yeah,
uh, if someone is going to compete in wrestling, and that's not to say that mistakes haven't been made, and that's not how we didn't learn to get to the point that we are, but their testosterone levels have to be below a certain amount in order to still compete against women, because testosterone is an edge. Testosterone is what we enhance when we take steroids.
yeah.
Uh, it's what we enhance when we just take things that modify your testosterone levels, your hormones. Um,
And
you
it
know the
can't even, and like scientifically, the effects of it don't even go away when you start stripping it from your body. Like as
there.
you transition to a female, obviously you don't have as much testosterone, but
Mm,
like you have definitely benefited from that testosterone being in your system up until the point where you transition. And like,
So
I think it's pretty obvious seeing the results of like trans women starting to dominate women's sports at a pretty consistent level where they're entering it.
I'll say that, like, I've only seen anything like that, and maybe I need to look more. But the only times I've seen anything like that have been in like combat sports,
Oh no,
specifically.
definitely not. Running
And
is like a big deal right now. I was watching uh they had this like statistical breakdown of trans women who are just starting to absolutely obliterate like female records and take female NCAA like scholarship positions away from
mm,
genetically born women, and it's just like, and it's again like this is a to me that this isn't a topic of like if a trans woman's a woman or not. Like a trans
mhm,
woman is a woman. Like I'm not saying that at all. And
mhm.
I'm not God. Like I just or God or I'm not responsible for the way we've developed as human beings. But it seems like if you're a man for 15 years of your life and you once you start going through puberty, for some reason you just seem to be better at like sports that require strength, I guess, which a lot of them do. Now,
Yeah,
combat sports specifically are dangerous. Um, that's where I think there should actually be like laws against it because if you like transition to a woman at like the age of 28 and you're jump into the UFC cage 2 months later against women, I think that's a crime in my opinion.
oh man. Um, yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we have to look at for a couple of reasons here, and it's why steroids are a banned substance for men, because you can do steroids for a year, and on and off for a year, and build up your strength. And let's say like your max bench press had plateaued out at 250. Then you take the testosterone and you're able to push more, you're able to recover more, you're able to build faster. You do that for a year, you raise your max to 300, and then you get off of them and you never take them again for your entire life. If
Yeah,
you are able to keep pushing yourself and supplement yourself with use other supplements, creatine and things like that keep your muscle density up, which also has to be cycled.
yeah,
Um, let's say your max comes down to 275. It's still better than what you're able to do before. Now, the price of that is you're likelier to have a shortened life. You're likelier to
yeah,
have different problems. And that's not to say that, a woman who was, born a man, transitioned to a woman, um, I don't think it's a much of a factor until you get to the elite levels of physicality.
oh yeah,
Because yeah,
that's like I said, like high school sports, even college sports to a degree. I personally don't care about it, but when it's the top of the top, the gap seems to get huge.
well,
And I don't necessarily know why, but it just seems to.
and I'll say this, like when I look at it from the AC take a step back perspective, it's a fucking game, and I don't care. Like,
Yeah,
let anybody in, take whatever you need to take or not take. Um, Safety is the only thing that matters to me, because it's a fucking game. They're all fucking games. They're completely meaningless in every goddamn
yeah.
regard. That people make such a big deal out of, throw so much money into. They're worthless, except as entertainment. And I guess entertainment is not worthless, but no.
The
My
yeah, the only
perspective is not every if every person quit playing sports tomorrow, it does not negatively impact our world. If every doctor quit tomorrow, we're fucked. If
oh yeah,
every mechanic
absolutely.
quit tomorrow, like, that's how I look at it. And if someone wants to play a game and see if they can take whatever advantage they have to it, like, it means nothing to me as long as people are safe.
And then personally, I would agree with that statement. The only other part of it that means something to me is that when it has real world applications or um, consequences for people, and if it's unfair that those are being removed. So it's like take like women. Like I saw this video from one of the top she made like a little documentary thing. One of the top women's high school runners, and she was upset because a lot of transgendered women are now taking scholarships away from that. What you would call like genetic? I mean, like born women, I guess. I don't know. And how that their speeds and their abilities are literally like record breaking the moment that they enter the field. And that those same people weren't even competing anywhere near that caliber on the men's team. And so to me, it seems like slightly unfair that these women would lose out on the opportunities for like scholarships and things like that. It doesn't personally affect me at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if it's fair necessarily. I don't know that it's necessarily unfair either.
It's
I
a
don't
big
really have a giant opinion on it. I think it's a question that's worth asking.
Sure, yeah, and everything should be discussed. I mean, this is something that, like, it's not new in the world, but it's new, not new in human history, but it's new in how we're able to express it. Like, medical science is way further along now than it used to be. And, if a person who was born a man decides, to go and play a sport as a woman, what they have to go through to make that happen medically, psychologically, socially, in every aspect of their lives, like the cost that they pay for that in our current society, like if I guess I don't think they're doing it for the scholarship. I think that might be one of those things that let's put more money into education so that everyone can be educated, and then we don't have this problem. Because
agree there.
Everyone should have that chance, and making it based on whether you can perform at a game and whether you're willing to turn your entire life and identity upside down and allow the world to take shots at you day and night. I mean, the instance of violence against trans women, especially trans women of color, like the numbers are astounding, and it's a tragedy. And it's like, if someone changes their life to this degree, they've already paid so much of a price to be who they are. Like, don't make it any harder. But the problem with, like, let's say the scholarship or something like that is the fact that we don't value education enough. We value the game more. So the problem is with our society, not with people. That's
kind of what I meant by like real world. Like, I definitely don't agree with it. It just seems to be how the world's run, whether I agree with it or not. But definitely, I would definitely say I think 99% probably of all trans women are not doing it for like the ability to perform better in sports.
Right?
Because human beings suck, there probably is a incredibly minute number that are.
Yeah, there are good and bad trans people, like there is in every category.
Exactly. But yeah, I would highly doubt that that's a factor for almost anyone that's decided to do that with their lives. That decides that they're not like, the person that they feel like they are.
If society would stop killing them at a disproportionate rate, then I would worry more about, the occasional trans person getting an extra scholarship. And I'm not saying, like, in a world of absolute fairness, are there not things we could do differently for everyone involved? 100% sure. I'm just, in our imperfect world, like, I think have
you're
a problem.
Definitely bringing up the better point of view. Like, it should just be definitely more readily available as far as education goes.
I know, man. That's like, I don't get why anyone would say, well, I had to pay, so you have to pay. Fuck, man, that person could be your doctor. If they can get, I would rather have every person who can be a capable doctor, a capable mechanic, capable scientist, capable philosopher, everyone that can contribute something to this world, to have the chance to do it. And I'm willing to pay from an altruistic perspective. I'm willing to do that. From a self-interest perspective, it would be ridiculously foolish not to, because we have the money to do it.
I mean, like, I'll just use him as an example because I heard him say it. A lot of people like Joe Rogan or don't like Joe Rogan, but I mean, he even had a podcast where he was saying, as far as taxes go, he was like, "Show me where you're going to put it," and he was like, "You can tax 90% of my money." He's like, "If you're going to give it to like mothers that need food or like kids that need to go to college, or if I know you're going to put it to somewhere where that makes sense, you can tax my money." But it's like if you're just going to put it in another politician's pocket, then go screw yourself.
Yeah, the problem's the system, which is why we need Batman and the Riddler to go and fix
Dude,
it.
the fact that politicians are like even allowed to invest like in the stock market is baffling to me.
Yeah, they're
And
legalized insider trading,
yeah, and
legalized
literally like the
manipulation.
PayPal was the recent big one where it's like PayPal had been in decline in the stocks for 2 years, and all of a sudden every politician out there is buying like at least 100 grand worth of PayPal stock, and then it shoots up like $20 out of nowhere. And I'm like, how is this just not instantly jailable offense? Like
Dude,
they clearly had information that other people didn't have.
mm-hmm.
Like Nancy Pelosi didn't just happen to put like $2 million into PayPal stock, and
What a
everyone
coincidence.
else, all of her friends did as well. And all of a sudden now it's shooting up because PayPal is going to be used like differently in the global market. And oh yeah, they didn't know about this, even though I'm sure they voted on something that led to this.
Right? That's the thing. Like legalized stock manipulation, they can decide winners or losers. They can make regulations that make it harder for a competitor of somebody, uh, or easier for someone else. And they have a view where they can do it without it often being directly responsible, a couple of logical steps back from the actual result.
Yeah,
But people know how these things work. There are people paid to figure out how these things work and tell you, vote for this bill over here that we paid for your campaign, so just do that. And it's not even one that looks like it'll benefit us, but
yeah.
it will 2 or 3 steps down. um yeah, I mean, the Riddler was right to a point. When the people who control the system are corrupt and are immune to the justice that they're in charge of, things have to change. But how that happens
Yeah.
should be more
I don't know
Batman than
that they're
Riddler.
ever going to. But
I have faith that humanity uh, will eventually book the dragon tooth themselves into a mess so bad that they have to learn and collectively make a better choice, um, and collectively look at the least and the lost and the weakest and make the choice on their behalf for their protection, for their equality, for their safety, um, and do this out of a willingness instead of
yeah,
fear or need. And it's weird, man, because we have to have enough discomfort and pain and things not go our way to understand things and gain wisdom and gain perspective. But we also have to not be destroyed by it so that our hearts are still able to make the generous and open-hearted choice for people that would otherwise not mean anything to us. When you're too
yeah,
bitter and you're too afraid, you don't look outward, you look inward, you look at self-preservation. um, so we need to find that balance where we're all kind of climbing together, but it's like that expression, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's a lie, because you can get maimed, you can
yeah,
get paralyzed, like you can get debilitated. um, but if you don't break down muscle tissue, it doesn't reform. If you don't create cracks in your bones, they don't fill in with calcium and become stronger. If you don't put pressure on yourself, you don't rise to it. But if you put too much, you just break.
yeah. I got hit by a car several years ago, or if no, actually way longer, about 6 years ago, and it did some like issues with my back where I have some impacted discs and whatnot. And it definitely has not made me stronger. It's made
Hmm.
me significantly weaker.
Oof. Sorry to hear that, man.
And it's part of life. But unfortunately, it happens to people all the time. It does suck, but that kind of turns it. But just going off your point, it's like it's not always good. Like I'm learning. I've learned to be with it, but it definitely impacts my life in a negative way. And it's not like a good thing. But I've definitely heard that as well. I think we're getting to like a weird point in like human development too, though. We're like we're gonna have to start asking questions that we've never had to ask before. With like even is something right? Is it even right to fix certain things?
Hmm. Like,
Because
what are you
and
thinking?
so I've heard this argument. I don't know at all if it's true or if I believe it. I don't know enough about the genetics, but just because we were talking about transgenderism and things like that, that there are some scientists that believe transgendered and even things like bodybuilders and stuff like that,
Hmm.
where that these are actually body dysmorphia issues that are hormonally based.
Hmm.
Even I've even heard certain people suggest that even things like pedophilia could be hormonally based, and that these are traits that once we understand the genetic makeup of ourselves better, that we'll be able to treat, um, like with a drug or with genetic
Hmm.
manipulation to some degree. But at that point, obviously pedophilia would be a good one to get rid of.
Right, right.
But like, would it even be right to treat like transgenderism that way?
Well,
Like
think of it this way. I mean, the only reason we're what we consider male or female is because of the difference of one chromosome and how many hormones it was exposed to in the womb.
yeah,
And that's it. You take the same thing. I mean, we're already capable now of changing a baby's gender from male to female, of
yeah,
changing eye color. Some things they've figured out. Some things are um, within the ability to manipulate. And some of our modern medicine has retroviruses that go in and rewrite your genetic code in order to help you with like autoimmune disorders and things like that, or to teach you how to fight off a disease innately. Which honestly, that's the future, man. Because at
yeah,
some point, antibiotics are just not going to cut it anymore, and we just need our bodies to be able to adapt to whatever comes along and handle it. And we're going to have to write that into ourselves
yeah,
because we have not evolved to that point. So, as far as like male or female, I kind of look at it as irrelevant. Um, our social constructs have been reliant on it because our social constructs are disproportionately weighted towards physical strength because it was a matter of survival at one point.
yeah.
As soon as
It's
we
not anymore.
created, as soon as the first person threw a rock, as soon
Yeah,
as we created a gun, we leveled the playing field. Your survival as a 60-year-old woman with a
yeah,
gun, you were as deadly as the most ripped combat trained 20-year-old if you're 20 feet away and you got a couple of shots on him before he can make it to you.
yeah. And
We've
I would
equal.
say in non-combat situations.
No, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Um, but we have externally made our environment more manageable to us.
Yeah,
And internally, like, I mean, man, I'm sure you've talked to people online where you didn't know if they were male or female and gotten insight and, decided,
yeah,
oh, I
definitely.
like this person. This is a cool person. Oh, I like how this person thinks. I've learned something here. And ultimately, like, we finally have that perspective. How would we have ever had that? I mean, even 100 years ago, people wouldn't have signed something with the wrong gender on it because they were shamed too much about, you know,
Yeah,
misgendering yourself or being misgendered. Um, it's
maybe
all
that's the
like
future. Just doing away with genders genetically from birth.
it's a possibility that we are not far from. Would we lose something in that? I mean, you lose something in every choice, and you gain
Yeah,
something, or you can gain something in every choice. And having our external forms determine how people relate to us. I mean, yeah, okay, so if you end up on a desert island and you expect to have kids and keep your society going, sure, it helps to have both parts to be able to do it. But we've advanced to the point where we can create life. We can get all the eggs we need forever. We'll soon be able to make them in a lab. You know, the body is the least important part of who we are, although it's damn handy for getting around. The people that I love in this life, the people that I have attachment to, it has nothing to do, like, their body type doesn't change if I love them. Their body type doesn't change if I'm friends with them, if I get along with them. Like, tall people, short people, everything. Like, that's just how we get around in this world. The thing that matters about us is inside, and that has, the only thing it has to do with our outside is what we've trained it. Like, we're going to get to that point. We're going to get to that point. And when we do, we're going to realize just how much of a big deal we made over stuff we didn't need to make a big deal out of.
It's true. I think it would solve a lot of problems. I mean, it'd be totally unforeseeable what that world would look like to a degree, but it'd solve a lot of issues if people were just no longer male or female.
Yeah, or like when you can write your body to look like whatever you want. Today I want to be green. Today I want to be 7 feet tall or 3 feet tall because I need whatever for whatever situation I'm in. That adaptability is actually not, it's kind of a return to our primordial state, but with the knowledge that as a species we've accumulated since then. And that's every story. That is the circular nature of the hero's journey of everything. I mean, it's
very Altered Carbon-esque.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, okay, this body's for
whatever body you need.
Yeah, I need a combat body, so let's get one that was written with a combat package in it and has the hormones and bone density and muscles to, accomplish combat things. But when we can make drones, why not be like, I want a body with faster reflexes and better neural connections and more adrenaline response so that I can, send my drone around and basically play Call of Duty better, for in real life. The brains in a vat thing, it may be a hypothetical thing of where we are now, but it's where we're going to get, because that versatility is ultimately more functionally useful than being locked into something. And that's without even going into a soul or anything beyond that. Just the mind, just the consciousness,
the soul
just
part
your
is
identity.
The scary part. Because, like, is there actually like a soul component or not? Like, that's the one thing I don't know if you could ever figure out. I do understand that. Well, not understand. I do believe that they will get to the point where you can map a brain virtually. Where you could take all of my things and put them into a virtual environment, and that thing would act and make decisions like me and might just be me. But if there is a soul component, like, and then I die, does that soul component just locked out of existing in that virtual thing? Like, is it going insane? Like, you would never know. Like, you would know, but you wouldn't be able to interact with anything because you're in a virtual situation.
I feel like if there is an intangible component to our consciousness, I mean, there must be some degree of freedom to it, because otherwise this world would be overrun with ghosts. You wouldn't be able to, like, walk into a bathroom without ghosts screaming at you all the time. Like,
or it would just have to somehow not be able to exist without a physical form, maybe. Or, I mean, obviously there's no scientific way to figure it out, or at least that we know of.
Not yet. Did you ever read there's a discussion years ago, I think it was between the first and second Star Trek, about the transporter, because they talked.
Oh yeah, about like if you are, because you're being disassembled and reassembled.
Yeah, that you're dead and a copy of you
Yeah,
is made somewhere else, because your your atoms are not actually transmitted to another place. It's the
yeah.
information of how atoms are supposed to be recombined
To
that's
make you, yeah.
transmitted. So the first time anyone is transported, they're dead, and everything after that is a copy. And I guess the writers of Star Trek said no, no one would do that otherwise, because religion, even if in the Federation, has been sort of like moved on from, because it's considered, irrational or whatever from Vulcan's standpoint. Like their answer was, you live and your soul goes with you, otherwise nobody would do it.
Yeah.
So that was their answer. They're like, we don't have an answer how or why. We just are going to say that it was convincing enough that people are willing to do it.
That's a very interesting point, though. That I forgot about that, but yeah, that's a creepy thought. I mean, not that we have anything or will ever see a teleporter in our life, but it's a creepy thought nonetheless.
Yeah, it makes Dr. McCoy's trepidation over it seem a lot more understandable.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely does. That's freaking weird. Existentialism, very bizarre. You
Well,
think
we've
the world will ever get to well, I know technologically we could get there, but you think we'll ever go the Gattaca route?
where you also get a caste system because of your genetics, and
Well, I mean, I think that would just naturally happen if we actually started genetically manipulating people as like the preferred method of human reproduction, and it wasn't somehow outlawed to do it the natural way, because you're gonna have accidental babies still, at the very
hmm,
least. You know what I mean? And if
and
genetically speaking, like 90, instead of 95% of every human being born is just genetically as perfect as they can be, I think the caste is just going to form naturally.
so you know how
Same thing we're talking about with like the NFL. It's just like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not it's
the
not
elite.
exclusionary. It's not exclusionary towards women like per se, but if you put like 100 people in a room, the fastest, swiftest people naturally are going to be the men that are the top men in that room anyway.
So
Minus the random freak of genetics.
you know how we've made like watermelons without seeds?
Yeah.
Honestly, before there becomes a problem with people having sex without the government approving, we'll just all be born watermelons without seeds, because that's the logical, easiest way to control a population. And then you give someone permission to donate their genetic material
Yeah.
in order to do that. Um, and that would also be an interesting thing. Like, all right, imagine a society of seedless watermelons where people have sex without there ever being a chance of having a kid. What is it about then? What changes with how people relate to it? Is it more about technique? Is it more about satisfying your partner at that point? Is it less about leaving your legacy on the world? Or, if you're someone who only satisfies yourself, everyone else has equally good options, because most people can be as pretty as they want, and the
Yeah.
standards of beauty will change at that point. Oh, did you
It would
choose to have?
definitely, it definitely changed things.
Yeah, I just see it like a forced, not sterilization, but being born without the ability to reproduce as the likeliest first cause, which of course then would be fucked if there was ever like a catastrophe that, an asteroid hit the database of all the information on genetic sequencing, and, we neutered we'd have to have some people that were capable of,
Yeah.
you know, procreating without a system, but that would also have to be regulated.
It'd be very, very bizarre. The world, the makeup of it would be very bizarre.
But I certainly think that you're on the right track. We would first abuse and fuck around and totally come up with new problems from a system where we could genetically, alter our kids before we would evolve to the point where we could handle it responsibly. Because that's how we do everything.
I think it would slightly be a negative force as well. I mean, like, you take away a lot of drive that exists because of problems that are in front of people with that. I mean, it's almost dystopian in a way, because like if everyone's just like the smartest, most athletic person they can be, it's like where does comedy come into play, or art, or anything like that? Because are you going to choose to be an artist when you can be, a multimillionaire inventor because everyone's that smart to begin with? Or, like,
Yeah,
just
oh man,
it would be
trust
very
me,
interesting.
intelligence would definitely be regulated, and we would have that caste system first because they would not want everybody with Batman level tactician powers and Reed
Yeah.
Richards intellect competing for their vision of what would make the world best. A lot of things would get neutered, metaphorically and physically.
And then there's that weird, like, even I forget what it's called, but it's like the principle of just discovering new things at the same time, regardless of position on the planet. Like, as far as species goes, like, for some reason, like, scientific discoveries tend to happen at the same time in different areas
Like the
without being,
pyramids.
without being necessarily in contact with each other. Not even just scientific. Like, animals do it too. I know there's been like lots of weird studies like that where. So I don't know if you've read about that, but like chimps, a lot of scientists, they have entered the Stone Age,
Hmm.
where they're using stone tools and whatnot that
Oh yeah,
they
yeah,
created
yeah.
themselves. But what they also noticed is that, like, I think there was like this island where chimps existed that's completely cut off from any other population of chimps, right? And when things have been introduced to chimps not on this island, or chimps start to learn new things, chimps on this island also seem to be developing those same skills and abilities, and there's no way that they're communicating with each other. At least no way that we know of that they're communicating with each other.
There are several schools of thought on that, and there are several words for what that is. Um, and yeah, we see evidence of it throughout history. I mean, the pyramids
Yeah.
came about, different parts of the world, different parts of us like aim. Like some people would call it a morphic field, which has kind of been disproven, but the quantum monad, which is a great word, the collective unconscious, the 0 point field.
Yeah,
These
0
are
point field, I think that's what I heard it called for.
Yeah, these are all words that kind of represent the same thing. That there's like a planned, programmed, maybe destiny, book of knowledge somewhere, and that we all have access to it, and it's usually kind of cut off for reasons that can be debated, but maybe so that not everyone is Reed Richards fighting over their version of the universe and wrecking it. Like the subjects in the experiment, the rats have to be rats because humans would be too unpredictable. So
Yeah.
we're kept as rats long enough until we evolve to humans, and uh, at that point, we've got everything that we've learned through the rat evolution to teach us and to use that with the power of a human. So, I mean, monkeys aren't the first creature to use tools. They're those fish that shoot pebbles with the speed of a gun. I mean,
Yeah.
a bird that builds a nest is as good as a tool using monkey. He just doesn't
Yeah.
have hands to create other things with, so he's limited a bit by biology. Having opposable thumbs gives you an edge in what you can do, but even some pretty lower order creatures are capable of using tools and affecting their environment.
Yeah. And it's not even necessarily like manipulating your environment isn't even necessarily like a sign of intelligence. Like, I've heard that people think dolphins and whales are on a similar, as far as capability goes, like their brains are in a similar place as ours. They just have no need to manipulate their environment.
Hmm.
Their environment consists of everything they need to survive, so they don't need to build fires, they don't need to construct houses, they don't need to create automobiles. Like,
Hmm.
they just but and I know it's not exactly the same thing, but I think they have the same like brain capacity as far as like problem solving skills go. I know octopus, like
Oh, people
they've
think
studied
they're
that
from
where
another planet. They're so smart.
they develop problem solving skills faster than we do.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea that they like their atoms came here on a comet or something and are not from here because they really are advanced and under observation, they just get more and more amazing.
Yeah.
There was a
I've heard
movie.
like, oh yeah,
No, go ahead. You first. You first.
I was gonna say I've even seen like weird little articles and stuff written suggesting that like the only thing that's really stopped them from developing what we would consider like intelligent like societies and whatnot is their limited lifespans.
Mm.
The average octopus only lives a few years at most. And that if they lived
Uh,
longer, that they probably would build things and have technology.
there's a movie years ago with Justin Timberlake, and I forget what it was called, but he had like everyone in the world has this watch on them, and when you run out
Time.
of time, you die.
I think it's just called In Time.
In time. That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. And I thought about it the other day, and I'm like, damn, how scary would it be to know that you're like you have a clock that's always running out? And then it occurred to me, like we're constantly dealing with this because we have to eat every day. We have to
Yeah.
find a place to use the restroom every day. We have to like get sleep every day. And we've just managed to mitigate the risks and the cost of all these things. But, you know, we're all just a few days away from having our clock run out, a few days of being cut off from resources, you know,
Oh yeah.
a tornado, an EMP, you know, a cold bringer nuke that just takes out biological life and leaves the rest. But um, so much of our life is really built around creating a system that helps us get through the next few hours. We're constantly on this clock.
Yeah, I just watched their YouTube video and I forget who the guy was, but he was talking about what would it be called? The food supply on the planet and how it actually only exists. I think he said 90, or it might have been 90 days, but it might have been 120 days too. Where he talked about like if there are major disruptions in this chain of event as far as like food is being produced and distributed throughout the planet, that like very quickly countries that don't have, he talks about like America and things like that being able having the wealth to buy the resources that we need to sustain ourselves for longer than the food chain necessarily goes on. But how countries that don't have that ability and areas that don't have that ability will very quickly go into famine and things like that and be like very high at risk of almost everyone in those places dying or not being able to get food. And the reason he brought it up is because he's like most of the world's wheat, I guess, comes from Ukraine and Germany, and this is the planting seed for wheat right now. And wheat makes up a majority of the planet's diet, and most of the people around the planet sustain on less than 2,000 calories a day. And he's like, right now they're supposed to be planting wheat, and they're not. That's going to be a major problem fairly quickly.
Oh, didn't know
And
that.
it's something like I would never really thought about. And I think there's other things he talked about like could be like introduced to mitigate that problem, like rice and things like that. But it's not currently how we're exporting and existing as a planet. Not that we can't do things to mitigate the problem, but if we don't, and this continues to go on for several more years, that it'll be like a very big problem in
Yikes.
places that don't have the economies that a lot the first world countries do, essentially.
Wow. It's
But at the very least, a lot of our farmland and stuff like that, he thinks are going to have to switch gears and start producing different crops than we normally produce.
might be good to buy some farmland. I mean, it's also good to be living in Colorado where we're surrounded by mountains and we have the high ground. So when the ice shelf drops and the sea levels rise, it's gonna take a little bit before it gets to us. But You know, we're gonna have everybody coming here, even more than we already are now.
Yeah, as long as that dormant volcano doesn't blow up anytime soon, we're looking good
Oh
as
man,
far as global positioning.
we've got a whole list of things that if one thing goes wrong, like, did you hear there's another freaking tsunami outside of Fukushima?
Yeah, I heard about that.
Like, we still don't know what the hell, how bad the consequences are from the last one, and it's impossible to find out at this point.
Yeah, a lot of natural disasters seem to be going on. We live in a weird time. We live in like a
Yeah,
very storybook time, in my opinion. Uh, the world feels very much like a dystopian novel the last few years, but it's
yeah.
like subtle. It's a lot more subtle than it is in like a book or a movie. But it feels like it's not that far off when you think about it. Like when you look at the like amount of people who've died from something, like it's actually quite a large number. But even though it doesn't feel like it is, even though like I personally know people who have, and I've seen people it's affected, but there's so many people that it doesn't seem like as big of a problem as it actually is.
Dude, we lost the equivalent so far of the population of Seattle in this country.
Yeah,
From all
that's a lot of
over.
people.
That's a lot of jobs, and it's not just, oh, people don't want to go back and work crap jobs because everyone's like, why don't you get a real job? So they did. That's some of them. A lot of frontline workers are gone. A lot of
Yeah,
frontline workers before the vaccine, and some even after. Like, we have lost a massive amount of human beings, even just in this country. And we are one of the worst countries in the world for the amount of people that we've lost.